Alexandra, very good morning. I hope everybody can hear me and see me. There's quite a lot of Alexandras in the room this morning. That's nice. Alexandra, thank you very much for setting the scene so clearly to having this important discussion today. And let me first say that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to address you and share this morning the Commission's vision and objectives for strengthening financial literacy across the EU. And Alexandra, you already alerted to it. Financial literacy is not a luxury, it is a necessity. In today's fast evolving economic landscape, we need to understand, evaluate, and manage financial risks and opportunities. And this is actually not just a matter at individual level, but also for our societies and economies at large. Sound financial knowledge is not only about being able to take the right decisions at key moments in life. We know them all. You want to take a loan to buy a house or an apartment. It is more. It also matters when we cater about how to live after retirement, for example, involving questions whether we want to sign up for life insurance or do something complementary to our pension. And it also means having the skills and ability to manage our finance and savings to first emergency situations and avoid financial shocks that poor decision may cause. And it means feeling empowered, indeed, empowered to make investment decisions. And all those decisions taken together are actually quite daunting, while they are essential to live a good life. And we thus need comprehensive, correct, and clear information to be able to take those important decisions. And we need to be able also to understand that information that we are getting. Yet, it is true, information on financial products is often very complex. The need to decide can make us feel lost. Easier access to options can also contribute to a feeling of somewhat being unprepared and that's also happened, taking excessive risks. Not least, there are the massive changes brought about digitalization. Increasingly, we have access to a vast choice of financial products and services through digital means that would have been unthinkable only a couple of decades ago. Compared to previous generations, we have access to many new tools and they bring a lot of opportunities. But as always, at the same time, there is a but, because there is complexity and risks, and that means that we need to be adequately prepared to avoid that the much faster and also much more frictionless ways in which transactions are made will not lead to situations that are not sufficiently thought through. And this is also very important because there is a lot of criminal activity online, fraud, scams, and maybe not crime, but also misleading information can spread very quickly online. So financial literacy equips us with the knowledge, skills, and confidence that allow us to take ownership of our financial lives, and that matters. This does not mean, and Alexandra, you were already alluding to that, that financial literacy is a substitute for consumer protection rules. These two dimensions are and must remain complementary. Robust regulatory frameworks remain essential to ensure that financial products are fair, transparent, and appropriate for consumers. Financial literacy contributes meaningfully to our consumer protection regime, so they complement each other very nicely. A financially savvy person understands what protection it is entitled to, spot when financial products do not provide such protection, and can react effectively. But let me today use this opportunity to present you the key pillars of the Commission's still rather new EU financial literacy strategy and the role it should have in enhancing trust, consumer protection, and market participation. And this strategy has developed against statistics. Again, Alexandra, you were hinting to that we are still faced with relatively low levels of financial literacy across the European Union. There is one Eurobarometer study, and that says very clearly that less than 1/5 of EU citizens demonstrate a high level of financial literacy, and many households remain financially vulnerable to unexpected shocks. This strategy, and I also wanted to be clear, is something that is designed to complement and support the many national initiatives that exist rather than replacing them. We certainly do not want to duplicate initiatives they're already running, either at national level or stemming from the work that is done in international fora, such as, for example, the OECD. But let me be a bit more precise what is in this strategy, and let me provide you with some elements of these 4 pillars this strategy is based on, and all are intended to complement and reinforce one another. The first one is about coordination and exchange of best practices that we have already today or that are emerging in the European Union. And there is quite a lot happening. Here, we as a Commission see our role more as a facilitator, bringing member states together to exchange what they do, what are elements where they have made good examples or others which have perhaps not worked so well. It is clear for us that financial literacy cannot be achieved through a one-size-fits-all approach. It always needs to be adapted to the target audience, and there are several criteria, geographically, demographically, and also, and I found that very important with regard to gender specifics. The second pillar, and this is really a large pillar, if I may say so, will focus on communication and awareness raising. We are doing that because there's actually much to do and we need to be comprehensive. And therefore, it is that we are preparing, and we have started already, a quite wide EU financial literacy campaign. Again, this is something that will complement and should amplify actually national efforts to raise financial awareness. And what should be in this campaign? So, grosso modo, we want to increase visibility of the many initiatives. We want to reach wider audiences that are today not reached, and ensure that citizens are really aware of the resources they have and they are available to them. And to have an effect, the campaign will have to include outreach through multiple channels, including, of course, digital communication. We will use public events, and we will, of course, also work very closely with our stakeholders, including, of course, Better Finance. What we are also doing, and I found this a quite nice idea, is that we are setting up a network of what we call financial literacy ambassadors in each member state. These are people who will have to reach out to national audiences and to foster a debate of financial literacy at national level. And of course, we also want the ambassadors to come together and to exchange about their experience, what works, what does not work, what can be done better. And this is already well underway, and we had this first meeting of the national ambassadors actually yesterday, so a good start. The third pillar of our strategy may sound a bit administrative, while it will hopefully give us much greater insight. It focuses on monitoring progress and assessing impacts. And this is not just bureaucratic work. To bring about real change, we need to be more able to measure whether our initiatives are really leading to tangible results. And for that, we need data and evidence of the levels of financial literacy across the Union. I was mentioning when I started that we have already a barometer survey, but we think it would be necessary to do this once again. And our target date is next year, 2027, where we will measure again what are the levels of financial literacy in the EU. And the need to measure results also, of course, applies at a national level. And therefore, we very much encourage member states also to develop evaluation tools to measure results of their initiatives. And this will allow us both to stay on course where progress is achieved, but of course also to correct direction where we are not advancing as we would hope. Finally, the fourth pillar is about money. It focuses on funding financial literacy initiatives, including the important research. Yeah, I think it is obvious, and that enhancing financial literacy doesn't come at zero costs. And while there are certainly limits on what the EU can do, there is EU funding instruments in place already to support financial literacy initiatives and research projects. The Digital Financial Literacy Flagship Initiative, for example, under the EU Technical Support Instrument, but there's also some funding available under the Erasmus Plus program or the European Social Fund Plus that make it possible for member states to launch financial literacy initiatives financed under the EU budget. And these opportunities can support innovative programs. They can also strengthen cooperation among stakeholders and help scale up successful initiatives. Sometimes not so easy to find this information, and we are very well aware of that. And therefore, we will, from the Commission side, create a website to make it easier to help stakeholders find information on EU funding channels for financial literacy initiatives and research. My final remark this morning is about how improved financial capability can support the EU's capital market, offering EU citizens access to more wealth creation and opportunities. Again, financially literate individuals are more likely to consider a broader range of financial instruments when managing their savings. And we should really encourage retail savers, and we should incentivize them to hold more of their savings in capital market instruments because it brings them a much better return on investment than putting their money on their bank account. Let me give you a few examples how we intend to reconnect European citizens and finance and capital markets. Again, Alexandra was mentioning in her introductory speech, we think about these saving and investment accounts that exist in some EU member states, also actually outside the EU. And in general, they have been proven to be a very effective tool because they can offer finally attractive returns and greatly benefit retail investors. And this is why the Commission has made in the autumn 2025 a recommendation to member states. And what we have given the member states in this recommendation is a blueprint with ideas and criteria for saving and investment accounts. This is something member states can look into. This is a recipe we found successful. And it is also clear that we have not just issued a recommendation and that it is, but we will monitor the uptake by member states very closely and come back to that. My second point, and I was already mentioning it when I started talking, is about planning for retirement. I think this is vital, important, and there is much to do because citizens need to better understand how much they are saving and what could be their final pension, also to allowing them to take another step to top up maybe their national pension with a private element. And there is a huge lack of transparency today, and that cannot be. Therefore, again, we are working with member states, including a recommendation to establish tools for transparency. For example, what we call pension tracking systems, so that member states understand better how is the population of, but also individually for citizens, for all of us, basically, that people have the possibility to see where do they stand today and what will be the situation once they enter into retirement. And this is what we call a pension dashboard. So two very important initiatives that have to accompany financial literacy. So, ladies and gentlemen, my time is coming to an end, so let me conclude. My message to you today is that improving financial literacy is not only important to strengthen EU capital markets, it contributes to a stronger and more resilient population who is better able to absorb economic shocks. And where households are more financially resilient, the entire economy and society benefits. And it is therefore imperative that we step up our action to improve citizens' ability to take financial decisions. Here we see, inter alia, the consumer and investor associations as our key partners. In particular, we count on consumer and retail investor associations to support that educational efforts remain accessible, unbiased, and aligned with consumer interests. With that, I'm finishing, and I would like to thank you again for having me here this morning to open this important exchange, and I give the floor back to the moderator. Thank you very much.